If you were an American spy operating deep behind enemy lines during World War II, the deadliest threat wasn't always a German patrol. Sometimes it was something far smaller, a missing code sheet, a broken radio part, a map you needed yesterday, and retrieving those items without blowing your cover could mean the difference between life and death. Welcome to today's story. And trust me, you've probably never heard this one before. Because for 3 minutes, we're going to open a tiny piece of intelligence history that helped shape the OSS, America's wartime spy agency and the ancestor of the CIA. This object wasn't a gun, it wasn't explosives, it wasn't even designed to hurt anyone. It was designed to save spies, to keep them alive, supplied, and one step ahead of the Reich. Today we're talking about the OSS file drop capsule, a miniature covert delivery device so small and so simple, you'd almost laugh until you realize how brilliantly effective it was. Picture this. A B-24 bomber or a light aircraft flies low over occupied Europe. No parachutes, no crates, just a handful of small cylinders, each one barely larger than a flashlight, falling silently into the night. Inside, instructions for sabotage teams, currency for resistance fighters, microfilm containing maps, target lists, and code tables. And sometimes, as OSS records confirm, even tiny radio components that would allow a spy to resume transmitting after weeks of silence. This capsule was rugged, waterproof, nearly untraceable, and designed to disappear into the landscape the moment it landed. 3 minutes, one gadget, 1,000 stories of survival. Let's break it down. The OSS file drop capsule, listed in wartime documents as a lightweight intelligence delivery container, was built for one purpose: to drop critical materials from the air without detection. It wasn't as iconic as the OSS Stinger gun or as flashy as their hidden cameras, but veterans of the agency consistently described it as one of the most reliable support tools they ever used. So what did it look like? The capsule was typically a small aluminum or hardened cardboard tube, about 6 to 10 inches long. Engineers designed it to be lightweight enough to throw from a cockpit by hand, strong enough to survive impact at high-speed waterproof for days, sometimes weeks easy for Allied agents to spot, but nearly invisible to German patrols. Early prototypes were simple metal tubes sealed with wax or resin. Later versions used rubber gaskets and internal padding that protected fragile items like radio crystals and glass-encased microfilm. The inside was divided into tiny compartments, each wrapped in oil-treated paper or waterproof cloth. OSS quartermaster manuals show lists of predetermined payload sets: maps plus code strips, currency plus mission orders, microfilm plus signal instructions, medical items plus contact procedures. The capsule could be tossed from a low-flying plane at 150 to 200 feet and would bury itself slightly into soft ground, making it harder for enemies to find. Agents were trained to look for them using prearranged visual signals: a broken tree branch, a marker stone, or sometimes just a pair of chalk arrows left by a friendly farmer. Small, cheap, invisible. Exactly what covert operations needed. To understand why the file drop capsule mattered, you have to imagine the reality of espionage in 1943. Communication lines weren't reliable. Encrypted radios were fragile. Spies moved constantly to avoid detection, and every day behind enemy lines increased the risk of being compromised. A single piece of paper could determine the fate of a mission or the survival of the agent. OSS officers routinely reported losing safe houses, gear, or code books during sudden Gestapo sweeps. When that happened, their only lifeline was receiving new material quickly and quietly, and that's where the file drop capsule excelled. Germany controlled every major road and rail corridor. Courier lines were constantly intercepted, but the air, especially at night, remained a domain the Allies could exploit. A pilot could fly in, drop a dozen capsules, and exit in less than 1 minute. No landing, no signals, no need to expose a resistance member to capture. In France, capsules often delivered microfilm of V-1 and V-2 launch sites. In Yugoslavia, they carried detonators to sabotage German supply trucks. In the Netherlands, they supplied maps for Allied airmen hiding after the disastrous Operation Market Garden. Pound for pound, the OSS file drop capsule was one of the highest impact intelligence tools of the war. It turned the sky into a supply line, one the Reich struggled to counter. The actual file drop operation was surprisingly delicate. OSS and Allied pilots were given precise coordinates using coded references, often disguised as weather reports or agricultural notes in radio broadcasts. For example, a line like, "partly cloudy above the vineyards," might signal a specific field in southern France. When the plane reached the zone, the pilot would descend to a dangerously low altitude, sometimes as low as 120 feet. German night fighters made this a risky maneuver, but speed was essential. The plane would throttle down just slightly. A crewman opened the side hatch or belly port. Then, with a simple flick of the wrist, he tossed the capsules into the darkness. They fell fast, tumbling end over end before striking the ground with a dull thud. To the Germans, it was nothing. But to the team waiting below, maybe a two-man sabotage cell, maybe a downed American airman hiding in farmland. That sound meant salvation. Recovery teams were usually local resistance members trained by OSS instructors. The collection procedure was quick: retrieve, conceal, relocate. Never open the capsule at the drop site. Always assume German patrols were somewhere nearby. The entire operation, from approach to escape, might last 30 seconds. But in those 30 seconds, an entire mission could be reborn. Unlike many spy gadgets, this one wasn't experimental. It was used constantly. According to declassified OSS archives, France 1943-44, over 1,400 capsules delivered to Italy 1944, more than 700 years Balkans 1943-44, at least 900. Norway and Denmark, fewer but extremely high-value missions. One French resistance fighter recalled retrieving capsules containing currency for bribing railway workers who provided schedules of German troop movements. Another OSS agent, deployed in Greece, reported receiving replacement radio crystals inside a capsule barely bigger than his hand. Crystals that allowed him to resume sending intelligence on German naval operations in the Aegean. Some drops contained escape and evasion packets, small compasses, ration chits, forged identity cards, and maps printed on silk so they wouldn't rustle at night. There was even a special medical payload: sulfa drugs, morphine syrettes, and dressings, often used to treat injured Allied airmen hiding from German search teams. In short, wherever the OSS was active, the file drop capsule was there too. Of course, no tool was perfect. The biggest risk? German discovery. If a Wehrmacht patrol found a capsule before the resistance did, it could expose a whole network. To mitigate that risk, OSS engineers made the capsules intentionally plain. No markings, no symbols, nothing that tied them to the Allies. Another weakness was weather. High winds could scatter the capsules over a wide area, forcing resistance cells to spend hours searching. Hours they often couldn't afford. There were also pilot risks. Flying low meant enemy radar could catch the aircraft. Anti-aircraft fire was common. Night fighters patrolled constantly. But despite all this, the capsule persisted. It was too simple, too cheap, and too effective for the OSS to abandon. And by D-Day, hundreds of Allied operatives, British SOE, American OSS, Free French saboteurs, were relying on it for survival. What makes the file drop capsule remarkable is not its size, but its impact. It didn't win battles. It didn't blow up bridges. It didn't shoot bullets. But it helped others do all those things. It was one of the quiet tools of World War II. Invisible to history, yet essential to the people who risked everything behind enemy lines. From the hedgerows of Normandy to the forests of Yugoslavia, this tiny capsule kept intelligence flowing, missions alive, and hope within reach. And for many OSS operatives, it may have been the single reason they survived long enough to see liberation. If you want more deep dive stories about the hidden tools, forgotten missions, and extraordinary people of World War II, subscribe to the channel. You're going to discover a whole world of history that was never meant to be public.